Hi everyone, this is Rachel from the Dotting Center. Today I'd like to share this coaster project with you. I learned so much from this little project, and by learned, I mean endured a great number of mistakes from this project. And even though there were so many fails, I feel it's still worthy of a video. Most of the fails involved resin, which if you're here for resin, just go ahead and change the channel. It won't hurt my feelings. But if you're here for dotting, that's cool because that's totally my deal. So in this video, we'll learn what not to use as a coaster when using resin. We'll also play with PBO prism paints and watch that magic happen.
Ooh. Ah.
We're going to use applicator bottles for big, thick, plumpy dots, and then we're going to use all different kinds of tools and all different kinds of application methods to achieve this beautiful coaster. Then at the end, I'll attempt to use resin, and well, I don't want to ruin the surprise. I'm so happy you're here. And thank you for subscribing. My little channel is about to hit 4,000 subscribers and I couldn't be more thrilled. You all are awesome. So now that all the mushy stuff is out of the way, though, yep, there will be more mushy stuff, but just of a different kind. So know that. Hey, let's go make a coaster. Now for this project, I used dotting rods, stylus silicone tools, and paint applicator bottles. All of these are available at the Dotting Center. For the flat paints, I used these 6 colors. And for the applicator bottles, I used these 3 colors in a thicker medium body paint, so you can get extra plumpy dots. Well, you'll see that I use these coasters in this video. I no longer recommend them. Instead, I would use wood, and I have an awesome link in the description below where you can get them very affordably priced on Amazon. Now, you'll need your coaster to be impermeable to water and resistant to heat. So, you'll need to use resin for the surface. Now, if you've never used resin before, please research resin on YouTube before you get started. It's not something to enter into lightly. Take my word for it. Now, each one of these designs were created using the Mandala 2 stencil in my reversible stencil collection. It's the 3.5-inch size, and the one I used was the purple one. And like I said, each one of these, even though they are dotted differently, they all started using this stencil. It's a very versatile and fun to use stencil, and I'll show you exactly how to do that now. So here's a little note about these coasters. While they are adorable and I will still use them, they are made out of silicone. And for those of you who are pros in the resin world, you will know that the one material that resin does not stick to, you guessed it, silicone. So now that I know this, I'm certainly not going to recommend it to anyone else. I will use these because I now know that I need to embed them in resin. But for you all, please buy wood, ceramic, you know, something that can tolerate heat and moisture, and slap some cork on the bottom, maybe some felt, and you're good to go. But that's my little upfront note about these coasters. All right, let's get into it. So first thing we're going to do is mark center on our coaster. And we don't want to use this chalk marker. I actually found really good quality chalk markers, and I'll list that in the description below. But we're going to use every single line on this stencil and transfer it to the coaster. And then we're going to use this PBO prism paint. And what you have to do with this stuff is stir it up really well. Obviously, you know, don't smoke or do anything with fire next to it because it's extremely flammable. But in order to make it work, you really want to mix up all those little pigments in there. And then what I want to do is put just enough right in the middle. Now, in order to control the flow of this stuff, I use pipettes. And I use these also for resin for small objects like magnets and pendants and earrings and that kind of stuff. These are great to have around. So now draw up some of that paint into the pipette and apply a very thick dot of the paint directly in the center of your project. And what I usually do is I will prep a bunch of work all with a PBO dot right in the center all in one day because it does take 24 hours for it to run its course and dry and do all its magic. So let's see what it does. Okay, so the real magic with this paint is when you mix it with other colors. So this is that PBO Prism Fantasy Eggshell White, and then I added a drop of emerald, and you can see over the course of 30 minutes, this is a time-lapse video, all the little mica particles inside the paint form these cells, and it is just so fun to watch what happens. This paint is cool. Alright, so now we're going to use an applicator bottle, and I use these applicator bottles for pieces of the design that I want to pop and have some kind of like a 3D effect. Whenever I want to use plumpy, fluffy dots, I always go for this, and I'm using DecoArt Americana Premium paints because they're a medium body acrylic. I'm just placing a dot right in the center of each of those little minaret shapes. And now using a stylus tool, I'm just going to add 2 dots of that halo blue gold, that Lumiere paint. This stuff is fantastic. Now we're going to grab our blue tool and add some of that teal paint, the Folk Art Teal metallic paint. And then using our flat silicone tool, just pulling out that paint into a pointed tip. So from this camera angle, you can really see how this is a two-tool, two-step process. And if I were to use applicator bottles, this would be a one-tool process, but I wanted to show you with the silicone tools and just to see how easy it is. Now it looks a lot more sloppy than it really was because of that chalk marker. Ah! Oh, it's such a bad chalk marker, and I'm not even going to list it. I won't even tell you what it is because it's so bad. Just know that the one that I list in the description is not the one that I use in this video. The good one is by K and Mom. It's a liquid chalk marker. It's like a 3mm size fine tip, and it's beautiful, and it washes off nice and clean. It's nice and bright, and it's just not this one, so know that. Alright, so now I've got my applicator bottle with some black paint, and I'm just going to place a big dot right in between each of those spindle shapes, right underneath where that brown is. And now here I added 2 little black dots, but you'll see that they start to run together because I had too much pouring medium mixed in with my black. So rather than cry about it. I just decided to pretend like that was on purpose. And yeah, I just went with it. I think it looks good. And now using a stylus tool, I'm just going to add one white dot at the end of every one of those pointed shapes. And now make another dot right in between those two dots all the way around. And this is a good technique for when you want to get proper spacing. It's a lot easier to cut spaces in half than to just kind of wing it and hope for the best. So this is how to make sure that you get proper spacing. Now I'm going to go in with my green and we're just going to add a dot right in between those white dots all the way around. Now you can see from this camera angle the difference. See how the size of the dots are the same between the stylus and the applicator bottle, but the applicator dots are much puffier. Now we're going to pull out our 1/8 inch silicone tool. This is a pointed silicone tool. And we're just going to start adding little bronze dots right in the center here. It's just going to be a pattern fill in all of these shapes with dots. And see how they're offset? I think it just looks better when they are offset like that in a grid pattern. Now, I wasn't happy with those brown dots. If you've noticed, they're starting to run into other dots surrounding it. It really was kind of a watery paint, and if I could do this over, I wouldn't use that one again, or I would use tinier dots in that section. So now after looking at it, I think I want to draw those bronze dots out into that outside row of dots. So I'm just adding 2 bronze dots with my micro dot tool, and I'm just doing that all the way around. And now taking our stylus tool, we're just going to add one long drop shape on top of those green drops. And now switching to the green paint, we're going to add one long drop on each of those blue drops. Now using a small stylus tool, we're going to add 2 white drop shapes on either side of that blue drop shape, just for a little decorative effect. Oh, and I forgot to show the, remember those brown dots that were all yucky? Well, I just covered them up with those gold dots in the center, and look, you can hardly see them. It's all fixed. And now using black, we're going to go over all those blue shapes with our pointed silicone tool with little tiny micro dots. Now using that golden pearl white, we're going to add dots extending down from that gold drop through the black and then on top of those bronze dots all the way to the white down at the edge of the coaster. So this is one cool thing about dotting, is that even though you have your dots already laid down, you can infinitely tweak the colors of those dots. There's never ever any mistakes. You can just color over them and you know, just make them something different than you had originally planned. It's always tweakable. So you see this project had a couple of paint issues that are solvable for the next thing. You know, chalk marker issues. It was fraught with issue. But I'm not someone that is gonna run away from mistakes. I like this kind of work because it makes me feel like I am challenged, and I've learned so much from this little coaster that it now has a story and a place in my heart. So do you have a project that you have worked on that was just giving you problems from start to finish, but that you now love it just for its issues? If you do, share it in the comments below. I would love to hear about it. Now one last dot of the pearl right on top, and then we're going to let this dry and resin it. Okay, so my plan is this. I'm going to take this silicone mold. It's the same shape and size as my coaster, and I'm going to fully encase this coaster in resin. So it's just stuck right in a solid block of resin. So I'm going to coat the bottom of the mold with one layer of resin, and I'm just going to evenly coat it, blow out as many of the bubbles as I want to, although this is the bottom so it doesn't matter too much. And then I'm just going to squish it right in there, add a little bit more resin on the top, and just coat the entire thing. And this way that silicone has no way of popping out or anything. It's going to be just covered in resin. So now I've got 45 minutes of working time where I can blow those bubbles out. And what happens is over time they'll float to the surface, and once they float to the surface you can blast them with your torch. So here's a mistake. I was doing two stones at the same time, and I used the silicone mold to hold those, and I think by using those it gave my coaster a wonky shape. So lesson learned there. So here I am trying to remove this coaster, and this is the first time I had ever used it, so I didn't know how difficult it was supposed to be. Apparently it's not supposed to be this hard. So I get to this part here, and well, I wasn't gentle. Ah! Now, there's a good way to do this. Now that I have failed, I know that the easy way to do it is you take some warm water and you give your mold a little bath. You just sit it in warm water and it will gently release the resin. So, I'll know for next time. But yeah, this has bubbles, but it's solid. This thing is not going anywhere. It looks pretty good. It just has this lip along the edge, which I can sand off and polish. So there are still some bubbles in there, but that was just because I had to pick up my kid from school and I wasn't on it. But right here what I have is sandpaper, and it goes from a 400 grit, a much tougher sandpaper on the left, all the way down to 1,000 grit. And this is just something that I have in my art room because you never know when you need to sand something down, and this is really handy. Now, this is a lot of extra work that I really would hope to not have to do next time. And an electric sander would probably be a better option for this. But I didn't know how much sanding was needed, and I wanted to kind of finesse it because it was my first coaster. And yeah, so lots of work, but next time I'll know what not to do. So here it is, the brave little coaster. Even though this project gave me all kinds of challenges, it ended up teaching me more than any boring old easy project ever could. I loved the challenges that it gave me, and hopefully you also learned from my mistakes and you can bring the knowledge of it into your next project. I hope you liked this video, and if you did, please hit the like button. I'd also love to have you as a subscriber, so hit subscribe and also the bell icon to be notified every time I post a new video. As always, you can visit me over at the Dotting Center on Etsy if you need any dotting tools, patterns, or projects. Thanks again for watching, guys. See you next time.